Welcome back, everyone. Goodie and JohnnyMo are here for episode 7.
You know, we're gonna focus on Netflix. But before we start, I think we're back with a fresh Kronbacher.
Yep, and back again with some JD on the rocks.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about Netflix a little.
So we got 3 things that we're going to go over right now. We're going to do 3 reviews. We're going to get them out all in one shot. 2 of them are on Netflix. One of them being Roma, which was nominated for Best Picture. The other one is Bird Box, not nominated for Best Picture.
Right, or anything.
Or anything. And then the third film that we're going to talk about is going to be The Upside, which I actually just saw over this past weekend.
So just a little bit of my history with Netflix. I think Netflix and streaming has probably been around for 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, Netflix, first started out just, they were the DVD mailers. They did that for a long time, and then they finally started streaming movies and content that was already available. And now, just in recent years, they really started producing their own.
Right.
Which some of their content has actually been pretty damn good.
Netflix only movies, and that's I think relatively recent. And I always found something like that a little odd because you got to keep in mind that I'm still trying to figure out what that, not that what it means, but what can you expect? Because back in the day you had movies and then you had made for TV movies.
Right.
And I can tell you right now,
which are 2 different qualities.
There's a whole different expectation and level of quality there. And you can almost watch any made-for-TV movie, and it's a made-for-TV movie. These are not theatrical quality, theatrical releases.
Listen, Stephen King's It from 1990 is very different from It, Muschietti's It from 2017.
Right. Now, some TV movies are real. I mean, a lot of them are very hokey. A lot of them, are just almost like a glorified TV episode of some show,
right.
But some of them are really actually kind of fantastic. I think if you go back to Bryan's song from the 70s with James Caan, or even Salem's Lot.
Yes, a lot of Stephen King's films were TV movies.
Yeah, the original Salem's Lot was in the late 70s, I think, with David Soul. Was actually a really good movie. It was a really scary vampire movie.
And that's hard to do on TV.
Yeah, so there are some TV movies that are really, really good, but there's a whole boatload of them that are just, they're just there. Nobody really cares about.
But when it comes to Netflix, I mean, I think they're
now
really
you have this something. Now this is in the middle. It's not theatrical release. It's not made for TV.
Right.
It's made for
streaming
services.
But the quality,
so I think they're in the middle.
But the quality, I think, is they're going for movie cinema quality.
Yes, and I think it really could hearken to an older style of movie making where basically the theatrical releases are a lot of just high budget product that really isn't I mean, again, not all of it, but
you're going to see the smaller budget films, I think, gearing towards. I think they're going to start finding homes for these streaming services like your Netflix, your Hulu,
and it's mainly
your Prime.
Because they're not finding a home, I think, in mainstream Hollywood, for these theatrical releases.
That's right.
Because everybody, every movie theater wants to have,
a blockbuster.
Star Wars open on 3 screens, and they got 7 screens in the theater or 10 screens in the theater, and 3 of them are going to be Star Wars, and 3 of them are going to be something else, and then the other 4 are going to be whatever. And it's like, everybody's looking to make the most money possible, the fastest possible, and according to them, the formula to do that is these big budget, either franchise film sequels, or the expectation, starting a new franchise, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes it doesn't. I think the people that are losing out are the people that really kind of love film and are not just going for a roller coaster ride, not just going for mindless entertainment, going for, an enjoyable movie, an emotional journey. And that's where I think, now, you've given this window where now this is where maybe these movies
No,
are going to go.
absolutely. I think Netflix has kind of opened the way and paved the path for some of these smaller budget films to come in. Maybe even like smaller, lesser named directors, lesser known directors.
And I can tell you right now that this is just the beginning of this.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and what's going to happen is so brief introduction. Just talking about Roma. Roma was a made-for-Netflix movie, and the only way it could qualify for the Academy Awards was to have a theatrical release. So it was released theatrically.
In a very small amount of theaters for a very short period of time.
And those are the rules.
Those are the rules.
And I can tell you right now, don't be surprised. 20 years from now, when the climate.
Oh, this is the start.
Yeah, when the climate changes,
Yep.
And Hollywood, doesn't really wake up and say, okay, we need to start making these types of films and releasing them theatrically.
Yeah.
If they don't do that, they're going to be in a position where I believe they're going to be forced where there's going to be so many films being made on these streaming services that they won't have to be released theatrically.
Right.
To qualify for the Academy Awards. For the filmmaker standpoint, I think that is to their benefit.
Absolutely.
But I think from an audience standpoint, I think it's a shame, only because it takes away the opportunity of seeing these types of movies on the big screen, which in my opinion look great on. Like, the big screen is not just for big spectacles.
Well, it's not just
some
the
of
big
these
screen.
These movies look great in the big screen.
I agree, and I don't think it's just that. I think it's just the whole movie experience, like going to the movies, sitting down with a group of people that you don't know in this dark room. I mean, when those lights dim down and the previews start, there's just a mood that changes, and kind of everyone's looking to get sucked into that film, and everything that happens, everyone's reacting together, and it's just an enjoyable moment. Like, you're living in that moment with everybody else watching this film. You don't get that at home. You could have the best quality sound system, the best television that's there.
It's not the same visual experience, and it's not the same communal experience.
It's the commute. That's exactly right. That's the perfect word for it.
And I used to get a little frustrated sometimes. Like, you'd go to some of these like art house movie theaters or revival movie theaters to see some of these older films, and they're on these small art house screens. That's why one of the movie theaters I mentioned earlier was the Biograph in Manhattan. They played old movies, but it was enormous. I mean, this was an enormous movie theater. If you go to, the movie theater in Huntington, or even to, there's a movie theater that plays kind of smaller films in Malvern, or you go to like the Film Forum in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. You go to the Film Forum in Manhattan, which I'm hoping is still around. You never know, because I haven't been there in a while.
Could be dating yourself on that one.
It could be. Exactly. Just talking about, But like, you'd go to the Film Forum in Manhattan that played, all sorts of old films. I mean, I was there many times, seeing, some old Japanese films from Akira Kurosawa, your Jimbo, even seeing the original Godzilla Gojira, and then other films, Roman Polanski's Repulsion and Knife in the Water, some Charlie Chaplin films, all sorts of, and I would sit there, I'd be annoyed because I'm like, the screen is too small. They're sticking us in this little room where there's a lot of seats, right. And I'm like, no. I mean, when these movies debuted way back when, they were on huge screens. Going to the movies in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and probably even into the 60s. There was a lot of single house movie theaters. There were giant screens and tons of seats. For everyone. And it was it was larger than life. Whether you were watching Gone with the Wind or whether you were watching, A Place in the Sun. Everything looks better on the big screen. That was the experience. So if a lot of these smaller films never get released theatrically, I think it's a shame. Another parallel I can bring to that is what Disney did. For decades, Disney always released its films theatrically, all its classic films. Every 7 years, you could go see Snow White, Pinocchio, Bambi, Dumbo on the big screen, and people would take their kids. And it was like that was the thing. Like every no, because Disney also, when videotapes started coming out, Disney never released its film. Disney originally never released its films on video. So they continued to show these movies.
But see, this is what they do now. So instead of doing what you're talking about in the theater, that's what they're doing now on Blu-ray and DVD. Is that they do it every 4 or 5 years.
Right. They're releasing.
They
open up the vault and they're releasing it. Right. But at the end of the day, you have a generation of children. You have multiple generations of children that are watching these films for the first time
at home,
and you're not seeing Sleeping Beauty or Cinderella or Peter Pan,
Snow
White or Bambi or Dumbo, Jungle Book. It's endless. You're not seeing them on the big screen, and they look so impressive on the big screen. That's why one of my things is we rented out a movie theater for my birthday when I turned 50. And it was like, I said, I got to do this. And that was my choice. I said, well, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and there was a lot of kids there that, had probably seen a number of Disney films on the big screen because they were recent releases.
Mostly Pixar films.
But, I'm looking forward to at some point, I'm not going to do all Disney films, but I said after that experience, it was great. I said, I'm literally going to do this for my birthday every year for the rest of my life. Probably much to everybody's chagrin. They're not always going to be Disney films, but, being that there's a lot of kids in the family, I'm probably going to make them family friendly. But I want to hit, Cinderella, Pinocchio at some point over the course of time, because I think people are missing out on that. So going back to
tell me about Roma.
Going back to Roma. So my history with hearing about Roma is I heard that there was this made for Netflix only film that was getting a lot of critical acclaim, and it was going to be released theatrically so that it would qualify for the Oscars. And it was a black and white film, and it was directed by Alfonso Cuarón, one of the three great modern day Mexican directors who I like his body of work. I liked all their bodies of work. And I was like, wow, and I'm like, wow, he did it in black and white. And I'm like, I gotta see this movie. And I really wanted to see it in the theater, and it just didn't happen.
But that was such a small window.
It was a really small window, and it wasn't released at every movie theater.
No,
it was
select theaters.
Very select theaters. And I missed the opportunity, and I finally told my wife, I said, we gotta watch Roma. So we watched it. And I'll be honest with you, I had very mixed feelings about this. I think it's a film that requires a second viewing because, and I even read this.
And you've only seen it once.
I've only seen it once. And I'm looking forward to seeing it again because knowing where the movie goes, now I can watch it back from the beginning and figure out what's going on. Because the movie is very, it is a very odd film. And I did read some sort of review that kind of summed it up. And like I said, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm like, it was like, the film doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. It's just like, almost like a day in the life. So you have this film that takes place, it's about a family in Mexico, probably, I guess probably in Mexico City, I'm not really sure. And I think it takes place back in the 70s. And you have this family with, it's got all these matriarchal and patriarchal figures. And they have help that work for them. And, stuff just happens. And stuff just keeps happening. And the problem with the film is that it's very slowly paced, and you don't know what the story's about. It's just you're just watching stuff happen. And
no, it's in Spanish.
It's in Spanish.
Right, subtitles throughout the whole film. And you don't really know who the movie is about. Is it about the parents? Is it about the kids? Is it about the help? Now, did that interest you, or was that frustrating?
I found that frustrating.
Yeah.
Because it provided no solid plot or character development. It was just showing you people.
Just showing you characters.
And it would go from like almost a different character, like it would focus, different scenes would focus on different characters. And there was a lot of extended scenes where people came in and out of the scene. And you're like, okay, what is the movie about? Is it just about watching these people live their life? You know, is the entire family the character? Is there, you know, what is the underlying plot?
Was there like a struggle that you watch them go through, or is it just like their lives in Mexico?
It was like their lives in Mexico, and even Carmen was like, "This is a little slow." I go, "Yeah," and I don't know who I'm supposed to be focusing on. You know, whose story is being told, and finally, you know, you finally come to realize that the story is about really one of the hired help, one of the maids. You know, the story really is about her, because towards the middle and the end of the movie, it kind of gears toward mainly like what her experience is. But I found it a little frustrating because I think theatrically, you might not have gotten away with that.
Right.
But for like, you know, if someone's just making like a low budget, you know, personal film on a streaming service, like I think maybe you could get away with that concept and that scale and that scope, and that works, and it's different. It's like a different style of storytelling. So I'm okay with that. It's just I just felt it took a while to get engaged. It took a while to get emotionally invested in anything because you didn't know where you were supposed to be emotionally invested.
But by the time you actually figured that out, like, is there a lot of time left in the film, or is it?
I mean, I
think get close to the end.
You're well past the middle point when you finally get to realize that. So if you don't like, you know, I went into that movie blind, and I wanted the story to just present itself to me. Had I probably read a little blurb about the film, it probably would have said, you know, the story of a family growing up in Mexico as seen through the eyes of this woman. Yeah, and then you might have known, like. But, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know. There is a certain rationale that, you know, you should be able to go to a movie blind, not know anything about it, and just sit down and have it unfold. And, you know, and that's it. And I found it a little frustrating in this case. But I think if I went back to it, I think I would enjoy it much more a second time around, because it is filled with a lot of detail and set decoration, and a lot of
so the production experience you thought was well done.
It was like, you know, like wherever people were, there was a lot of stuff in the background, a lot of things going on.
So that made you feel like you were there, like in Mexico, on location.
Now, I was really looking forward to it being in black and white, and I actually found the black and white to be a little disappointing. Because to me, it did not have the feel of a standard black and white film. And I have a feeling it probably has to do with it. I think it was probably digital black and white. And digital black and white is a completely different feeling and texture from film black and white. You know, and that's the same thing with, you know, digital, what most people would understand when you say like a digital recording versus a film
reel,
you know, in color. You know, to draw a comparison, you know, I'm not against digital, but I think there's a certain spot for that. I think digital is great for live events.
It's how and when it's used.
Yeah, I think digital is. I don't know that digital is really good for almost any film, in my opinion. Because, okay, so for example, I think digital is great for live events. If you're watching a baseball game or a football game or the news or whatever, like. I think digital is great because it makes you feel like you're there,
you're part of it,
watching something that is really happening in front of you, and it's really happening in front of somebody somewhere. You know, you're seeing what they're seeing. You know, so I think digital might also be good for documentary filmmaking, where people are filming the real world, and now you will see exactly what they see. You know, that is, you know, and that is not the same mindset of a staged film. You know, to me, celluloid film has a certain look to it, and it does not look like real life, and it is more effective looking like that. And when you shoot television shows or film in digital, it looks like you are on the set.
I think that's a misconception. I think that's about the frame rate. I don't think that has to do with whether it's digital or film.
Well, it could be.
Or cellular, like the actual film reels. I'm pretty sure that's about like the rate and all, like the frame rate and all that stuff is to make it look like as if you're on the set rather than watching it on the big screen.
Right, because if it looks like if you're seeing it from the view of someone standing next to the cameraman, that's a completely different visual of what it's looking like through the lens of the camera.
Right.
If you ever see, sometimes you watch some movies where they have like behind the scenes featurettes.
Yes.
And you actually watch.
Like you were
footage.
Like you're next.
Yeah,
to the
someone's taking footage of the people filming the film.
Yes.
If you actually see footage of scenes being filmed, that footage looks nothing like the actual scene in the film.
But that has nothing to do, I don't think, with digital versus film. I think that's.
Well, I think or maybe
that's how like the lensing, that's how they do like the color distortion. That's all done in the editing process.
Could be. Now, I think the other terminology might be video. Video versus film. I think like if someone walking around with a camcorder, filming something. Now, sometimes that can be used to great effect. Like I think like something like the Blair Witch Project, which is almost like almost documentary.
Right.
This is a movie basically of these people. The people in the Blair Witch Project weren't making a film. This is supposed to be someone walking around with basically
like a
handheld camcorder, taking actual footage. So I think in that case, it made sense for it to look like real life. People gonna. Some people might just say I'm out of my mind, but watch a baseball game on television, and then watch a baseball movie. You are not watching the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Like you watch a movie like, anything like The Natural or, any sports film. You watch any sports film and compare that to actual live footage of that type of game. It's a completely different feel because one is a film,
right,
and one is the real world.
I think that's how they edit the film, though. I think that's all in the editing. I don't think that has anything to do whether it's digital or like actual, celluloid film. I think to me, it's not the medium. It's how they do the editing process. I think that is where you get that final product on scene, and whether it makes you feel like you're a part of the audience or it makes you feel as if you're part of the people on the set.
Yeah, and that could be because when I was watching Roma, I felt like a lot of the black and white was a little bit bled through. It was the blacks weren't black enough and the whites weren't white enough. Everything just kind of muddled into. It was too sensitive. It picked up every single difference, and you weren't getting clear scenarios of contrast and the use of shadow, because that's one of the the beauty of black and white is contrast and shadow. And you can actually see so much more depth in the absence of color. Color is great, but black and white it can be great as well. There was something that I had mentioned in one of our earlier episodes about a quote from Roger Ebert, and I'm sure I botched it, but I actually brought it with me just to show you exactly the source. And it's this one sentence, and this is from a book that Roger Ebert wrote called. It's a book called The Great Movies, and he actually did 3 of them, and he talks about what he considers to be great movies and so on. And he's very diplomatic about it. But in the introduction to the first book, he wrote, and when I read this, I was like, yes, I know exactly what he's talking about. He wrote, "You cannot know the history of the movies or love them unless you understand why black and white can give more, not less, than color." And that's a really important concept. People that love black and white films don't hate color. They, in many cases, black and white can do such a better job. The color is not needed. You can see so much more of texture. It allows you to focus more on the people as opposed to the surroundings. In a movie like Gone with the Wind or Star Wars, color is very important. It's a color can almost be like a character.
But then I was going to say that adds to the film.
Right, and that type of a film like My Fair Lady, where there's a lot of some brilliant costumes, scenes where color are important. That can be there are films that absolutely work in color.
Is Psycho black and white?
Psycho is black and white. And there are films that I watch today where I go, oh my God, I wish they would have made this in black and white. It would have been so much better. And then there are films that are in black and white, and I'm like, Jesus, they should have just made this in color. It would have been so much better. There is, you have to understand that black and white is not a deficiency. Back in the day, it was the choice because it was too expensive to do color film. But when color became readily available, people still continued to make black and white films for decades, and not just small studios with Stussy Brothers. I'm talking major studios. Because it was a very strategically done artistic choice. And there are some movies that just look perfect in black and white. There's so many. And I think he wrote this. He had mentioned it in reaction to about, I guess, a film class he was teaching where the people were saying they hate black and white. And he was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, and I think it's true. I think if you love film, or you say that you love film, and you can't watch black and white movies, then you don't love film per se. You like the films that you're used to, or you like a certain subset of film, which may be films from the past 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or maybe even 50 years. But, to say that you like film, you have to embrace all of film, I think, because there is greatness in every aspect of film. There is greatness to be found in every genre, various directors from various countries, and, documentaries, and, if you say you don't like black and white film, you are writing off literally probably the first 50 years, if not more, of film history. Now granted, like I said, color film started in the 30s, but there are so many black and white films from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s. There is a lot of black and white films and great films. And if you just blindly write them all off, to me, that's just insane. That would be just as insane as someone writing off color films. Well, I only like black and white films. I can't stand anything in color. I'm not going to watch anything. Well, like you said, then you're stuck in the past, whereas everybody here is stuck in the future.
Right. Well, it's both sides of the coin, and it's either you're always going to like what you like. Like we said before, with our top 10, it's like you're going to like what you like, and that's it. So yeah, like you're stuck in. Don't talk to me about the color film, about the black and white, because I'm only going to look at those colored films, and other people are going to be vice versa. And I think, unfortunately, you're not going to really change those minds either.
Right, but it's a shame though, because it's all you have to do.
Well, you're limiting yourself.
You're limiting yourself. I mean, it is not intolerable to watch some of these older films, and I know people that it doesn't matter whether you're putting them in front of Casablanca or. Ma and Pa Kettle go to Illinois. Yeah. Like they look at that, they can't watch it. They can't watch anything.
I don't mind black and white films. I have trouble with subtitles, because subtitles to me, I feel like I'm paying more attention to the words that I'm looking at on the screen rather than what the characters are doing or the surroundings. And I find myself sometimes I'm always trying to catch up to the words and not actually taking in what's happening on the screen. And I feel like I do lose I lose a little bit of that when it comes to subtitles.
There's a little give and take to that, because if you're watching foreign language films, which there are so many good foreign language films from going back from today all the way back to decades ago, you're either going to watch them in subtitled or dubbed, and given the choice, if you're going to watch a foreign language film,
I know you say subtitle.
Subtitle is the way to go, because dubbed will always lesser quality. You want to hear.
Oh, I agree. You want to hear the natural tongue.
You want to hear the
language
natural tones and inflections and dialogue of the actors and
dub
actresses.
never does it as well. Dub always sounds, I don't want to say terrible, but it just, I feel that the dub takes away from the film even more than subtitle.
And I think you might actually have more liberties with the translation in a dubbed film versus a subtitled film. I think when they do subtitles, I think that they are more accurate to what is being said. Whereas when you dub something, I think they take more freedom with it.
Okay.
Because they know that it's going directly to someone else's market, and they just kind of package it. And there are some movies where I've seen both versions. I've watched the dub version of Run Lola Run and the subtitle version, and to me the dub version is intolerable, because what you have is instead of people sounding German, they sound like a bunch of Valley kids from California, California West Coast.
Right.
It literally sounds like people on the West Coast, in California, and I'm like, you compare that to how they're actually enunciating in German, and it can be it almost is two completely different movies. It actually is.
That's gotta be hard.
It actually is detrimental.
That's what I mean. Where I think that probably takes you out more than the subtitles. Yeah. But again, I don't care about the black and white. I could enjoy black and white films. I really can. It's just the subtitles for me sometimes will take me out of the film, and I don't like that. I want to be able to pay attention to not only what they're saying, but what's going on with the characters in that moment.
Well, it takes a little bit of discipline to kind of keep your eye on both. It's harder. It's harder movie viewing, for sure.
But I can see how that could require a second viewing.
And it is kind of funny, because I actually have seen some clips of where they showed, and usually for comedic purposes, where they show American films dubbed in a foreign language for a foreign market, as opposed to subtitle. And you see films
like
it's
gotta be funny too.
It's but like
well-known films.
And these were not done to be funny. This is how the film was released, dubbed in wherever country they were showing it. And you have these films, by Woody Allen, however, and it like you hear how they dubbed it, and you sit there and you go, oh my God, they're ruining it. And so the flip side is also true. Us dubbing these foreign films for an English speaking market, you literally may be ruining the film. If not done really right.
So is this something that you'd recommend people to go and watch?
Roma? I do, but I have to say with caution. Like I said, if you don't know what the movie's about, you could be sitting there going like, oh, you're just waiting for something. I think a lot of film.
Watch a trailer.
I think a lot of people that watch film today are always looking for intense action. And it's they're looking for mindless entertainment and some sort of big budget intense action. So like, someone watching that film is going to sit there and say, "Are you kidding me?" They're going to be bored after 5 minutes. Yeah. They're not used to watching a film for the sumptuousness of the set, and maybe a slow build up to a story. In this case, it's a very slow build up, because it takes you over 45 minutes just to figure out what the story is.
You're giving the viewers a heads up at least on that. Yeah.
So I think, but I think it was highly regarded by the film community, and I think rightfully so. It was a very deeply personal film for Alfonso Cuarón, and it is full of the frame of the film. Everything in it is very full, and there's a lot of detail. It just takes a while to figure out what the actual story is. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it again, but I'm sure my wife will not be sitting to it with me. So I think that's my semi review of Roma.
Okay.
I'm definitely looking forward to keeping my eye out for more stuff on Netflix.
I'm sure you'll catch it more. You'll catch more of it next time. That's for sure.
I'm just curious how it. I feel like a lot of these things are like almost like word of mouth. Because the film we're going to talk about later is Bird Box, and
That was a very word of mouth.
Yeah, like I don't think you see commercials for movies on Netflix.
I think you are though. I think now you're starting to see that.
But where are you seeing them?
On TV, like a regular trailer.
On TV,
yeah.
Okay.
Like they're in like commercials.
It's
they're
just like
putting them on.
on Netflix only, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also too, like when you watch Netflix shows, sometimes even before, like as the show is about to begin, it'll almost give you like a little commercial on something that it's producing itself. Like if you were like watching like a Luke Cage episode or something like that, before the show even starts, it might flip to a little ad of the movie itself. Mm-hmm. Not to mention, when you watch videos on YouTube or just like you said, watching TV, they're putting these commercials out there. But The Irishman was a commercial that was on the Oscars.
Yes.
Okay. They're doing the same thing. It's going to be
Scorsese.
Scorsese
and with
his buddies.
Yeah, and that's Netflix.
That's going to be Netflix, but it's going to be released for a small amount of time in theaters, just like Roma was, and you're going to be able to watch it on Netflix like that week.
Yeah, I mean, I really think this is indicative of.
And you have a guy like Scorsese.
Yeah,
Scorsese is going to be doing this. That's a huge director name.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're going to start, I think, seeing this happen more and more.
I am actually glad that the one that I think the movie that has really broken the ice is this, small personal black and white film by one of these great Mexican directors. And if this becomes the avenue for, like I consider myself like a cinemaphile, really true lover of film, and I feel like I'm not getting enough of that in the theatrical releases. If this becomes the new avenue, so be it. And hopefully I can get to see it. If it's something really good, hopefully I can get to see it on its limited release on the big screen. I mean, Scorsese, come on.
I know that I would like to see that on the big screen.
That adds a lot to the. That adds a lot of what I want to call clout or credibility.
Oh wait, yeah, big time.
Yeah, next thing Spielberg will be doing something.
I don't think. Well, Spielberg he's very old school. I think Spielberg really just he actually spoke recently about the streaming services and putting stuff on the big screen, and I think he talked about like that. Similar to what we were talking about before, like that whole communal or community feel of being in the theater with all those people. Like there's nothing like that, and you don't get that at home. So like when he's making something, he has that in mind.
But I could see Spielberg just saying like coming up in his mind going coming up with a certain type of film that makes sense to do it that way.
I could see him producing and putting money behind something that would be
or fostering somebody else's ideas.
Yes.
Okay.
But his own personal film, I don't know if he's going to do that yet. It doesn't. I mean, at least the way he was speaking, it didn't seem like it. So I think with that, we're going to transition to The Upside,
which I have not seen. So I'm going to go on. I'm curious to hear what Chris has to say about it.
So The Upside stars Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston and Nicole Kidman. She has a role in this as well.
Oh, I didn't know she was in that.
Yeah, so Bryan Cranston plays a quadriplegic, a very wealthy quadriplegic. He was a businessman, an author, helped like transition companies or tried to basically go in. I think he like told companies like how to basically like run or like operate to basically gain more wealth, so to speak, basically to earn more money. Kevin Hart was a convicted felon, had done time. He's got an ex-wife and a kid that's growing up. And so the whole movie starts out with Kevin Hart not fulfilling his requirements to, I guess, receive financial aid. Mm-hmm. So he needs to get like signatures as if he's like going on jobs and interviewing to kind of not get cut off from getting financial aid.
Okay.
So he goes around to a couple different places and basically just like bombs these interviews like on purpose and just basically is like, yeah, just sign my sheet, right?
Is the film a comedy or a drama or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both, and it is a remake. So this was a French film that was done, I want to say in 2011.
Oh, really?
The Untouchable, something like that.
Okay.
It was a French film, and then it's been obviously adapted for this. So Kevin Hart goes to interview for what he thinks is a janitor position with Bryan Cranston and his people. So, Kevin Hart goes into the penthouse and he sees all these people that are like well dressed. He's coming in like a hoodie, sweatshirt, and like jeans, and all he's looking for is a signature. So he's basically like wandering around the place at one point as all these people are going in on these interviews. And at one point, he's just hearing the interviews through the door, and he's like, you know what, forget this. He barges through the door and crashes this like kid's interview, and just walks in. He's like, listen, you've had me waiting for over an hour with this. It's like, this is ridiculous. All I need is a signature. And he's talking to Bryan Cranston, and he's like, you want me to give you a signature? He's like, yeah, why? What's wrong with you? and he's like, well, I can't really move. And it kind of just starts out where like you hear all these other people doing their interviews and the way that they're talking, and it's almost like the stereotype for people that are just looking at someone with a disability and just automatically thinking they can't do for themselves, that they can't help for themselves. And here comes Kevin Hart, and he's like, I don't care that you're quadriplegic. He's like, just sign my form. And he's like, I can't really do that. So Nicole Kidman, who's his assistant, is kind of like aghast at the whole thing, and she's kind of almost like, you're like, how dare you? But Bryan Cranston kind of laughs at the whole thing, and he's like, no, why don't you sit down? And so he sits him down, talks to him, and then eventually like gives him the job. Nicole Kidman's like, what are you doing? He's like, no, we're gonna give this guy a shot. So some of this movie is a little predictable. You know, you kind of can see Kevin Hart's his whole story arc and how it's going to go, how he's going to turn from this guy that doesn't really care about anybody but himself, but starts to kind of take on these responsibilities with Bryan Cranston, and he kind of starts to turn his life around, and even like he wants to help provide for his kid because his kid looks up to him, and he knows he's basically a loser to this point, to this kid. It really hasn't been in his life. So now all of a sudden that all starts to change. But the chemistry between Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart, that's well worth going to see this movie. Those two guys on screen were great. There's a scene where Kevin Hart has to change Bryan Cranston's catheter.
Okay.
And it's hysterical because in the beginning, like there's an earlier scene where a physical therapist comes in and changes Bryan Cranston's catheter, and Kevin Hart's just watching it. He's making all these like moves, and like he's covering up his midsection. Like he hears the word catheter, and he's like, ooh, and then like he's watching the PT do it, and he's like, doesn't that hurt? And Bryan Cranston's like, I can't feel a thing.
Yeah, I'm cringing underneath the table right now because I had my first and only run-in with a catheter 2 years ago.
It brings back bad memories.
Yeah, I was like, that was the worst part about having heart problems. was the catheter. I could live with everything else.
And that's basically what happens. But eventually, Kevin Hart has to do that. Yeah. But Kevin Hart doesn't look at Bryan Cranston. He doesn't look at his character like as a quadriplegic. He just looks at him like a person.
Right, a person, and
that's what's treating him. And Bryan Cranston's not used to that. Like everywhere he goes, he's getting treated as if he's handicapped.
Right.
And Bryan Cranston he's a brilliant man. Well-spoken, very smart, and very wealthy. So this is a change of pace for him. So a great example is when they go for their first car ride, they go down into the garage, and Bryan Cranston owns all these beautiful sports cars. And Kevin Hart's like, where are we going? He's like, oh, we got to go into this like minivan, like mobile that he's got like all decked out for someone who's handicapped. He's like, I'm not driving in that. And he's like, well, what else am I supposed to do? He's like, it's like, you're getting in one of these cars and I'm driving you. So they get into this beautiful sports car, and he's driving fast, and Bryan Cranston's like starting to enjoy that because he's actually starting to have fun again. Because Bryan Cranston had his characters had a tragic outing where he's now quadriplegic. He wasn't always this way. He wasn't born this way. He got this during an accident. His wife passed away from she had cancer, but they had they went not, I don't think it was hang gliding, but it was something like that, like not parasailing, something like that.
Mhm.
Okay, and they got, I think they had a crash, and she died his wife died from the crash. So
Okay.
he has bouts of depression and nightmares and all that. But you just kind of see like their growth throughout the entire film. Nicole Kidman doesn't trust Kevin Hart at all. Like in the beginning, thinks like he's like, you have no idea how to take care of him, and like he's only doing this just to basically watch you fail. And so eventually, like he makes it like a personal mission to like kind of show her up a little bit that he can do all this. So that was a lot of fun, and you kind of just start to see like even the romance between Nicole Kidman and Bryan Cranston start to happen.
Right.
And this is based on a true story.
Oh, that I did not know.
Yeah, so this is based on a true story, and the end of the film, there's a nice happy ending to it all. There's definitely like a lot of some drama and like stereotypes that occur throughout the film, which I think was one of the knocks on the film, where like it wasn't something that was new or groundbreaking. Like it kind of just like retread a lot of stuff.
Right, telling the same story over and over again.
Right. So.
Well, I think I like Kevin Hart. I think he has a pretty. I think he's got like pretty good commanding screen presence.
Oh yeah, he's got great comedic timing.
Yeah. I mean, he can really own a scene. He's very comfortable. So I actually think this would be a movie I like, and I like Bryan Cranston as well. My recollection, one of the controversial parts of this film, which I think is a little absurd, is they were the filmmakers were coming a little bit under fire because they thought it was insensitive that Bryan Cranston, who is a fully functional human being, was playing the role of a quadriplegic.
Oh, and not getting someone who actually is quadriplegic to take the role?
Yeah, and it's like, okay, one, how many quadriplegic actors are out there?
Right,
So,
I'm sure there are.
I'm sure there are. But I think in these politically correct times, I think people are going too far because Hollywood has a long history of people playing, of actors and actresses playing roles of characters that have some sort of handicap that they don't have themselves.
Right, that they don't really have.
And I don't think this is like one of, Hollywood's dark secrets and, people are finally talking about it. I don't, whether you're talking about, someone like Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot or,
Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks
playing
someone who is mentally challenged. Yeah,
and there's so many examples of these. I forget the name of Leonardo DiCaprio and What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yeah.
There are so many. Patty Duke in The Miracle Worker, playing Helen Keller. It's like, there are so many examples of these types of movies, whether they're playing someone who is blind, but then you have, you do have the scenarios where you have someone like a Marley Matlin, in Children of a Lesser God. She is actually deaf.
Okay.
I believe. So you can have some of these scenarios where that works as well, and there's nothing wrong with that either.
No,
but I don't think it's
if you're the
negative.
If you're the casting director and you're putting out a call for people that are quadriplegic to come in and audition for this role, if they're great at the role, give them the role.
Yeah, I mean,
but if Bryan Cranston could also if he can pull off the role, even if he's not handicapped, even if he's not like a quadriplegic, but yet he could play the role really well.
Right, and you're talking about a starring role. So I mean, sometimes you want a marquee character. This is not like a.
I think they were going for a name.
Yeah, you're going for a name. You're going for a name actor. You're not just going to give the role to anybody.
And that's a bit.
If you're talking about a supporting role, that might be different.
Right, but ultimately, because this is like you said, it's a starring role. And listen, it's a business decision because the studio at the end of the day is looking to make money. Mm-hmm. Is that the right thing to do morally? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think it's a gray area.
I think it might be a little gray, but I don't think it's definitely not a clean cut. Like, oh my God, this is so wrong. It's not wrong. Because I mean, there's so many variations on this theme. You can have straight actors and actresses play gay roles. You can have gay actors and actresses play straight roles because these are actors doing a part.
Right. That's their job.
That's their job to do whatever is required for the role. You know, you have things like, you know, movies like The Birdcage, you know, with like Robin Williams and Hank Azaria. You know, I mean, I don't think these actors are gay, but they're playing the part, and that's fine. You know, and you definitely have some movies where people that are gay playing gay characters. Right. Maybe that's something that's validating to them, and that's okay as well. You know, I don't think there's you know, and I think that's a little. I think it's a little different from some of the criticisms where I think people are completely miscast. So, for example, I think a movie like Ghost in the Shell with Scarlett Johansson,
right, where you didn't get an Asian.
You know, everybody in the film is Asian. It takes place in Asia,
except her.
And they've hired Scarlett Johansson to play the lead role because they didn't want to hire an Asian. They wanted a marquee, you know, name. You know, and it's like, to me, that's
different.
That's a different type of criticism, and I think there is some sort of validity to that criticism. It's like, okay, you know what? You know, that to me was a little, I think, you know, as much as I love Scarlett Johansson, it didn't make sense, you know, to me. You know, but in these cases where you have, you know, all these different people playing, you know, and, you know, what about, you know, even the, like you mentioned even Forrest Gump, not just Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump, but, you know, his captain, what's his name?
Oh my God. Lieutenant Dan.
Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah.
I forget the actor that plays him, but, you know, at some point in the movie, you know, he
doesn't have legs.
You know, his legs are amputated.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, you know, so he's playing an amputee now, and it's like, but he's not amputee. You know, it's like, I don't think prior to maybe the past couple of years, anybody would have looked at these types of roles in movies and said there was anything wrong with them. But now, I think the political climate is, people are so sensitive, and people are so, they take everything so far. You know, everything is such a major, you know, infraction on humanity. And,
right.
You know, I think.
Well, I think people are also coming just to.
I think people are coming too far.
People looking to hate just to hate.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
You know, I think you can go too far with these types of things. You know, and it's like, you know, and some people say, well, if that's how you feel, you're right. Well, you know, it's hard to say someone that what they feel is wrong, but then again, there is a certain logic to, like, you know, there is no reason for you to be offended by this. You know, you're taking offense at nothing. You know, so I consider that argument to be.
Listen, I think as long as people, if they're given the opportunity to go and audition for the role, if you've got the acting chops, fantastic, go and do it. I think you know, if whoever the casting director was, if they thought Bryan Cranston was the best person for the role, what else can you do about that? Yeah. You know, they're looking to cast the film as best they possibly can with the people that come in and audition. Yeah. So to me, I mean, I guess I didn't really hear too much about the drama, I guess, about all that aspect. That's different to hear about that. Like, that's kind of a shame if that's like that was dragging down the
kind
film
of putting like a shadow on the film. Yeah. It's like, you know,
because to me the film is it's an enjoyable film. Like I said, the chemistry between those two guys, I think, is fantastic. There's some parts where you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh a lot. And there are other parts that are more serious, like you see some bouts of depression that Bryan Cranston goes through, you know, and that's kind of tough on him a little bit. But overall, I thought it was a good film. I think it's worth going to see in the theaters, and yeah, I think that's pretty much my review on it. I love the cityscape. You know, a lot of different shots of the city are really cool. That was. It's pretty interesting.
Cool. I mean, it's probably going to be, you know, it's one of the movies that's, you know, in my queue to, you know, movies from 2018 that I haven't seen, you know, to see.
I think it's 2019 actually. That came out in January.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't even 2018.
Wow. I forget it's February, right? Or
it's
almost March.
It's March.
It's actually almost March. So
I think now we're going to go...
Because we were talking about Netflix, we wanted to also go to Bird Box.
Which was a popular... this was a popular release a couple months back. This was a big word of mouth with Sandra Bullock.
Sandra Bullock. Yeah, I mean, I really heard it from word of mouth. Because again, I was only really using Netflix for TV, for Netflix only TV shows, the Marvel shows and Orange Is the New Black. So a bunch of people told me about that.
But you had some good actors in this. So you had Sandra Bullock, you had Sarah Paulson, who was in this, who I think she's fantastic, and John Malkovich, which was a shock. I didn't know he was in this until I started watching it. And he's the dick in the movie, but he's the dick that you kind of needed at a certain point. Like I don't want to give away any spoilers to it, but there's John Malkovich has he's a real jerk for most of his role, but one of the last times you see him in this movie, you're thankful that you have him.
Yeah. I mean, the feeling I got from the film, I almost felt like it was like the pilot of a TV show. Like I almost felt like I wish they would have.
We're going to get something.
I wish they would have turned this into a series.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I felt like it could have been like a series, even maybe a 1 season limited series type of scenario.
Well, I think we're going to talk spoilers here. So
explored more in this world.
I want to put that out there right now. If you haven't seen this film yet, go watch the film and then come back and listen to the review, because we are going to be talking spoilers, I think.
Yeah.
I thought the beginning of the film was interesting, where they're showcasing what's going on around the world via the news. And it's happening in countries that are like destabilizing. Like there's stuff that's going on in Russia and over in Eastern Europe, where all these problems are starting to occur. And then finally, little by little, it starts to hit the U.S. And they're not really sure like what it is. I think, did you like that you don't ever see anything?
Well, oddly enough, I think that was probably like something that really saved them a lot on budget. Again, which is probably a major.
No, I think that was a
concern.
I think that was
films.
I think that was a conscious decision to not do that.
And if you're not going to do that, then you have to stylistically, account for that.
Which I think they do, because the people are almost describing what they see as it's happening, and it's different for everybody. It's not the same thing.
So I think this is a scenario where less is more. But they were put in a creative decision. They were put in a creative movie making stance where they could only make the film under the premise of less is more, because they weren't going to spend a lot of money on but that works though, because it leaves it to your imagination, or it makes it even scarier because it is unknown.
Right.
Because the thing is anybody who looks at it dies. And so you even as the viewer, you don't even get to look at it.
No,
you don't get.
You don't.
You're in the same boat as them. Nobody knows what it looks like, because anybody who's looked at it dies, except for people who are insane, apparently.
And I really liked. There was a point where they're using like security footage and cameras to kind of like see what's going on outside, and even then, like you don't see what it is.
Yeah, they just show like almost like a little shadow or wrestling.
And then when people are looking at, so when people are watching the video through the camera, like that even still affects them. They're not even outside, but whatever they see through the video camera, it triggers that that sensation in their head, reaction to kind of off themselves.
And the movie definitely had like I could definitely like feel the influence or similarities to other types of films. So like I felt a little bit of World War Z in it, where it's like a worldwide phenomenon that's happening really fast, and you kind of see it happening.
Right.
So then it's also a little bit of a Walking Dead, a little bit, in the sense that it's you're post-apocalyptic at this point, and people are just trying to do what they need to do to survive. And then I also felt a little bit of A Quiet Place.
Yeah, I got that.
Where you kind of have this unit trying to survive in this world where there is, unstoppable death outside the door. You just have, this small group of people, and they're, trying to navigate through this, reality where life on Earth as it is known has changed, and may literally be that way forever.
Right. It may never go back.
Where you have like children that are being born and are growing up, and this is the only world that they know. And you're kind of seeing that a little bit now in The Walking Dead, where now it is so many years later, there are children that were only born
that only know this
in the
world.
post-apocalyptic zombie world.
Yeah, I thought the Jeep scene was, I thought, a little bit too much, where they black out the windows of a Grand Cherokee. They have to go on a supply run. So one of the guys in the house used to work at a food store. So they're all getting in this Jeep and they're going to drive to the food store. And again, they can't look at anything. So when they get into the Jeep, everything is blacked out. Mm-hmm. And they drive.
Do you feel it was unrealistic that they'd be able to do that?
I think it was very unrealistic that they'd be able to go. I mean, it wasn't far away. It's a newer Jeep, so they're putting in GPS.
But not for nothing, I think the whole street would be littered with...
The street would be littered with bodies,
cars, all sorts of stuff.
Now, this particular Jeep basically had sensors around the entire car, not just what you would typically get backing up, but it would say if there was something on the side, if there was something that was in front of it. So like they were literally just driving through things. And I thought it was a relatively easy drive.
Yeah.
Up until they got to...
And that just might have been, a plot device where they had the suspension of disbelief.
Well, they had to get out of the house
to move the story along.
And I mean, you were in the house at that point for the majority of the film, so they had to get out of that scene for a little bit and kind of progress the story.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think there was enough in this movie that they literally could have stretched it out over like a 6 1-hour episodes, or 12 1-hour episodes.
I see that too.
Because I feel like, when it was over, I was like, that's the end? There's no more to tell about the story, because it did cover a number of years.
Yep.
And I was just like, I really wanted more. I wanted a larger story.
I like the flashbacks. I like you saw them on the river when Sandra Bullock's with her son, and then another girl that she kind of basically adopts.
But I love that they just called them. She
boy and girl.
Boy and girl.
She couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
She couldn't. In the beginning of the film, Sandra Bullock is pregnant, and she has like no connection to the baby. Like she can't emotionally associate with the child at all, which is basically almost like postpartum.
Yeah.
Depression. Like she's not connected emotionally, so she just calls the kids boy and girl. She doesn't give them names.
Yeah, and I thought that was actually effective. I remember watching this with my wife, and she was like, "Oh, she's so mean to them," and I'm like, Carmen, you don't understand. I go, she has to be mean. She has to be cold and strict. And I like, when you're in that, if you're in that type of,
that situation.
That situation, one mistake. And somebody's dead, or you're all dead, So you don't take any chances. So you overcompensate by being, super strict.
I think part of that
opportunity.
I think part of it was because she had to be that way, and I think others was because she didn't have that emotional attachment. It wasn't until the end.
Yeah.
Once they got to the end and they reached that sanctuary.
Yeah.
Which was the big twist, because she finally emotionally connected to them both.
Yeah.
But I thought it was an interesting film. I enjoyed it. It was not an Oscar winner, but
and I don't think it was meant to be.
No, I think this is a film that was made for entertainment purposes, and to me, it
was well done. It had a a pretty good cast. It really took a pretty distinctive story and went as far as they could with it. I think all the scenes in the beginning, people killing themselves.
Yes.
Was very effective
and very visual,
and powerful.
Yeah.
It was like it was scary.
Yep.
So I think that worked very effectively. And I don't recall too many other similar films that kind of had that type of scenario going on.
And it's like right in the beginning of the film. Within the first 10 minutes, that's all starting to happen.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done. I enjoyed that, and I mean, I like Sandra Bullock. I think she's a great actress.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I literally wound up watching that twice over the course of 3 or 4 days. I said, I said I wanted to watch that again.
Yeah.
So I wound up watching it again.
So if you have Netflix or have the capabilities to watch anything on Netflix, I would recommend watching Bird Box.
Yeah, and I would. I hate to tell people I recommend that they watch Roma, because I think there's so many people out there that are just, not going to enjoy the film and not going to get it unless you're really, into film and are open to different types of experiences. They're just people that just, they just like to be mindlessly entertained. Whether it be an action or a comedy or and this isn't that type of film. So I recommend it for the experience. I recommend it, just to be, to be aware of, I think any Best Picture nominee is probably, worth knowing about.
Yeah.
This is a film I think that's going to be remembered. I think it's going to be remembered as the film that kind of paved the way for Netflix or streaming, Oscar contenders. It was, I think it's what do you call it? A trailblazer in a sense.
Yeah.
I think
I agree.
It'll go down in history as being the first streaming movie to be nominated for Best Picture.
Absolutely.
It's going to be remembered decades from now, because I honestly believe that this is a direction that's going to snowball, and get bigger and bigger, and it's going to be a source of a lot of good films in the future that we're going to start seeing in awards. So I think that is kind of good. So to me, it's an important part of film history, to see that. And hey, you just may like it. It may even turn you on to black and white films or foreign films, and
because it is both.
Go for it. It's or turn you on to that director and see some of his other films, which are actually pretty good. So on that, I think we might be done.
Yeah, I think that pretty much calls for it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode again. Thank you guys so much. You can reach me on Twitter at Chris J. Goodman. JohnnyMo does not have Twitter.
Yeah, you can reach me via smoke signal or carrier pigeon. No, I'm only kidding.
But please, guys, by all means, leave any comments down below. We'd love to respond. Like I said,
like us, subscribe,
share these videos if you can. Trying to build up a nice little audience. All right. So
all right.
Thank you guys again.
Have a good
Take
one.
care. Till next week.